Created by MyGuide. How Titanic Sank. For decades after the disaster, there was little doubt about what sank the Titanic. When the unsinkable ship, the largest, most luxurious ocean liner of its time, crashed into an iceberg on its maiden voyage in 1912, it took more than 1,500 of its 2,200 passengers to the bottom. As the ship slipped into the North Atlantic, so, too, did the secret of how and why it sank. Route of Titanic's maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City, the point where she sank marked in yellow. 2 government investigations conducted immediately after the disaster agreed it was the iceberg, not any weakness in the ship itself, that caused the Titanic to sink. Both inquiries concluded the vessel had gone to the bottom intact. Blame for the incident fell on the ship's deceased captain, E.J. Smith, who was condemned for racing at 22 knots through a known ice field in the dark waters off the coast of Newfoundland. The iceberg, thought to have been hit by Titanic, photographed the morning of April 15, 1912 by SS Prince Adalbert's chief steward. The iceberg was reported to have a streak of red paint from a ship's hull along its waterline on one side. The RMS Titanic sank in the early morning hours of April 15, 1912, in the North Atlantic Ocean, 4 days into the ship's maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City. The largest ocean liner in service at the time, Titanic had an estimated 2,224 people on board when she struck an iceberg at around 23:40 on Sunday, April 14, 1912. Her sinking 2 hours and 40 minutes later at 2:20 on Monday, April 15, resulted in the deaths of more than 1,500 people, making it one of the deadliest peacetime marine disasters in history. Captain Edward J. Smith, in 1911. Titanic received 6 warnings of sea ice on April 14, but was traveling near her maximum speed when her lookout sighted the iceberg. Unable to turn quickly enough, the ship suffered a glancing blow that buckled her starboard side and opened 6 of her 16 compartments to the sea. Titanic had been designed to stay afloat with 4 of her forward compartments flooded, but no more, and the crew soon realized that the ship would sink. They used distress flares and radio messages to attract help as the passengers were put into lifeboats. In accordance with existing practice, Titanic's lifeboat system was designed to ferry passengers to nearby rescue vessels, not to hold everyone on board simultaneously. Therefore, with the ship sinking rapidly and help still hours away, there was no safe refuge for many of the passengers and crew. Compounding this, poor management of the evacuation meant many boats were launched before they were completely full. Colonel Archibald Gracie, one of the survivors who made it to collapsible lifeboat B. He never recovered from his ordeal and died 8 months after the sinking. As a result, when Titanic sank, over 1,000 passengers and crew were still on board. Almost all those who jumped or fell into the water either drowned or died within minutes due to the effects of cold shock and incapacitation. RMS Carpathia arrived on the scene about an hour and a half after the sinking and rescued the last of the survivors by 9:15 on April 15. Some 9.5 hours after the collision. The disaster shocked the world and caused widespread outrage over the lack of lifeboats, lax regulations, and the unequal treatment of the 3 passenger classes during the evacuation. Subsequent inquiries recommended sweeping changes to maritime regulations, leading to the establishment in 1914 of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. Collapsible lifeboat D photographed from the deck of Carpathia on the morning of April 15, 1912. At the time of her entry into service on April 2, 1912, Royal Mail ship Titanic was the second of 3 Olympic-class ocean liner sister ships, and was the largest ship in the world. She and her sister, RMS Olympic, were almost 1.5 times the gross register tonnage of Cunard's RMS Lusitania and RMS Mauretania, the previous record holders, and were nearly 100 feet longer. Titanic could carry 3,547 people in speed and comfort, and was built on an unprecedented scale. Her reciprocating engines were the largest that had ever been built, standing 40 feet high and with cylinders 9 feet in diameter, requiring the burning of 600 long tons of coal per day. Her passenger accommodation, especially the first-class section, was said to be of unrivaled extent and magnificence, indicated by the fares that first-class accommodation commanded. The parlor suites with private promenade cost over $4,350 for a one-way transatlantic passage. Even third class, though considerably less luxurious than second and first classes, was unusually comfortable by contemporary standards and was supplied with plentiful quantities of good food, providing her passengers with better conditions than many of them had experienced at home. Wreck of the Titanic, June 2004. Titanic's maiden voyage began shortly after noon on April 10, 1912, when she left Southampton on the first leg of her journey to New York. A few hours later she called at Cherbourg in northern France, a journey of 80 nautical miles, where she took on passengers. Her next port of call was Queenstown, in Ireland, which she reached around midday on April 11. She left in the afternoon, after taking on more passengers and stores. Tree map showing numbers of passengers and crew by class, and whether men, women, or children, and whether saved or lost. By the time she departed westwards across the Atlantic, she was carrying 892 crew members and 1,320 passengers. This was only about half of her full passenger capacity of 2,435, as it was the low season, and shipping from the UK had been disrupted by a coal miners' strike. Her passengers were a cross-section of Edwardian society, from millionaires such as John Jacob Astor and Benjamin Guggenheim, to poor emigrants from countries as disparate as Armenia, Ireland, Italy, Sweden, Syria, and Russia seeking a new life in the United States. Thank you for watching this video. Convert any text or PowerPoint to video using MyGuide for free. Just Google MyGuide.